Welcome to the Kinvestor Report, where I sit down with analysts and talking heads to discuss mining, commodities, and the market. I'm your host, Arlen Hansen. This interview is not investment advice, and if we discuss any stocks that I have a financial interest, it will be disclosed. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by legendary Bill Holter. Bill's a financial commentator and metals broker with over 2 decades of experience. He's been a vocal critic of the market manipulation, central bank policies, and the crucial role that physical gold and silver have to play in the hands of the people. He's a well-known contributor to the GATA, Gold Antitrust Action Committee, and now publishes the truth on his website, billholter.com. Described by many as the world's premier forensic economic analyst with a focus on precious metals, he brings a massive amount of knowledge to our discussion today. I'm super pumped to have him on. Bill, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time to join us. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me, Arlen.
Yeah, right on. Well, America voted. Gold got crushed. Bitcoin and Dogecoin scream. Kind of feels like the market has a short-term memory of why we were buying gold in the first place. So I just kind of want to revisit that. And
Right.
I've got one question. I've only prepared one question. Everything else is going to be freestyle. Okay. 35 trillion in debt, soon to be 36 trillion. It's $100,000 per American citizen, $3 billion a day. Are they losing their goddamn minds here?
Well, they've already lost their minds. Yet to get to where we are, they've lost their minds.
True.
I mean, this past year, the interest expense was 1.1 trillion. It's going to be 1.5, 1.6 this year, and the following year it'll be 2 trillion. And that's against a tax revenue base of 4.7 trillion. So we're going to be within 18 months, we're going to be at 40% of tax revenues on interest only. So that's basically money pissed down the drain. I don't think there's any way we even get to that point. The markets are not going to allow it. The Federal Reserve will end up as the buyer of only resort. Forget last resort, only resort. So yeah, I mean, this is math, and I keep saying this is math. It doesn't matter whether Trump is in or Kamala is in. The only difference is when we go down, do we go down under the rule of law or do we go down under the rule of their law?
Mm. What is your definition of bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy and insolvency are 2 different terms.
Thank you.
As we stand right now, we are insolvent. I mean, Social Security is insolvent. All of these programs are insolvent. The Treasury is insolvent. The Federal Reserve itself is insolvent. The Federal Reserve, the last I saw, they had in 2022, just before they started raising rates, they had 65 billion in equity. That is what was holding up the financial system across the globe. They've lost, I don't even know what the number is now. It's something like $400 billion, $500 billion on their portfolio. So their equity has been wiped out. The Federal Reserve is operating with no equity. If you had a bank doing that, they would have been shut down, a year ago, 2 years ago. There would have been a bank run, and it would have been all over. And that's where we're headed, is toward a bank run on the U.S. Treasury and a bank run on the Federal Reserve.
So I Googled like the Federal Reserve the other day, I just wanted to figure out more about it. And this is what the definition of the Federal Reserve is: responsible for the stability of the financial system, the safety of the banking system, and the protection of the consumer's credit rights. So I laughed like hilariously when I read that. And it was founded to provide the country with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. Can you tell me like one thing the Fed is doing to provide the country with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary financial system right now?
No, and the Federal Reserve, you go back to 1913, and if your listeners have not read The Creature from Jekyll Isle by G. Edward Griffin, you got to read it. The Federal Reserve was created basically to enslave not only the people of the United States, but the U.S. Treasury itself. And that's what they've done. I mean, it was uh, long term a mathematical bankruptcy, enslavement of the United States. And I think the Europeans, when this originally started back in 1913, they understood that the United States was the stumbling block, if you will, to what they're trying to do now, one world order. And the only thing I could say is there's one amendment in the United States that's going to prevent, if you want to call it the takeover, and that's the Second Amendment. I mean, people are not going to go down and say, okay, well, we lost everything, and we'll just be humble.
Here it is.
Yeah, yeah, and please give us food or whatever. Fact that this country is armed, people are not going to take, what's coming. It's going to be massive unrest.
Yeah, yeah. So who's caring? Like who cares about this debt load? Like right now, like the banks are clearly encourage it, right? Like we all get mail every day. Hey, take on more credit. Take on more credit. That doesn't give a in my opinion. And like the average American has $100,000 in debt on their own.
But they don't know about it.
They don't know about it. But who's losing sleep over this?
Easy answer. The BRICS nations.
Yeah.
That's why the BRICS is formed. They fully understand the debt load, the interest expense. They understand that they're sending real goods for pieces of paper or digital pieces of paper, and they're getting paid nothing. It's the never pay model is what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just find it interesting. It's like eventually they're just going to say, no, I don't want your dollar. Like our currencies
Right,
our currencies are being backed by something physical, and you are not, and I'm done with it. So you go ahead and go in as much debt as you want. Sure, go ahead, go buy your Dogecoin, your Bitcoin, and all these things that are backed by nothing. And at one point, we're just going to tell you to go pound sand. Like that is what I see happening.
That's exactly what's going to happen. And the American citizen, the American consumer is going to figure that out and find out once goods, because we're running a $1 trillion trade deficit at this point, meaning we're getting $1 trillion worth of goods that are not produced, not manufactured in the United States. We're getting those goods and we're getting them, at this point still decent prices. But once the foreigners say, no, we're not going to accept your dollars, that is going to be immediate hyperinflation if you can find the goods.
That leads to me to a thought, and about like Bitcoin and gold, and like, yeah, Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies you can buy. Like someone's always willing to sell it. Someone's always willing to sell paper gold, right? They're like, what's going to happen when people say, I want to collect? Like that is what I get scared about.
Well, then you're going to have two new metals on the periodic table called unobtainium. You're not going to be able to get gold. You're not going to be able to get silver. People who hold gold and silver are not going to sell their gold and silver for any amount of fiat, because the fiat can't be trusted. And I mean, all you have to do is go back to Weimar Germany to understand that, you could buy something today and then it costs double tomorrow. And people who own gold and silver are not going to take fiat if we live in a world where, the next day they have 25%, 50% less
value
purchasing.
Yeah.
So
it's not rocket science, right? It's not rocket science.
Not at all. No, the metals will go into hiding.
Yeah. Okay, Russia and China central bank buying. According to data, China concealed its gold purchases for the last 6 months, so they're clearly buying the out of it.
Right.
Russia's gold reserves just at 200 billion. What's the US doing with their gold reserves right now? Do we have an idea? Are they being public about it, or what's their game plan?
Well, do we have any gold reserves? And I
What's the
mean,
truth? What's the truth? I truly don't know. Right? Like
well,
you,
we have
you
not had an audit. There's been no audit since 1956.
yeah. But a
And
quick Google search.
we know that we know that in the late 60s, uh, there was gold flowing out left and right. We had 20,000 metric tons, and they say we were down to 8,300 metric tons with the London gold pool trying to keep the price at $35. And then that blew up, and gold has gone higher and higher since then. I mean, even since the year 2000, when gold was 200, it was got down to $252 an ounce.
I
So
remember
at
that day.
2,600, 2,700, that's better than a 10 bagger, which means the dollar since, well, just this century, the dollar has lost 90%, more than 90% of its purchasing power.
Yeah. And that's a fact that
So, I mean,
cannot be denied.
yeah, and I have, right, no, that's a fact. And I have no idea what we're doing with our gold reserves, if we even have any. I
Yeah.
suspect we're probably down to 1,000, 2,000 tons.
Yeah.
And that gold has gone out the back door of West Point and Fort Knox.
Yeah. That's interesting because like I did Google this yesterday, right? And it said, oh, America's got the largest gold reserve. Gold. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's not what I kind of
That's
felt or
bullshit.
understood. And it's so how long does this
Yeah,
lie go on for? Excuse my F-bomb. I don't drop that very often.
well, the reason that's you said the largest gold reserves. Let's assume that the US has 8,300 tons. If you look at just China's internal production for 24 years, I mean, they're producing now 400 tons plus per year. And they've been at that level for what, 10, 12 years. It was lower earlier. But let's say that they averaged 300 tons per year, just mining from within the country, and none of that gold leaves their borders. You're looking at what? 7,000 metric tons just on internal production. Then you look at the Shanghai numbers, what has been imported, and some of that has been gobbled up by the official source, by their central bank or treasury or whatever. Just on the back of a napkin, I can show you uh, that they've got 25,000 metric tons. And I've seen a pretty credible number of 35,000 metric tons versus the US purportedly having 8,300 metric tons. So the US is not the largest holder of gold on the planet. China is. Now that
Mhm.
leads to that leads to the next thing. Uh, Once they see that we're going off a cliff, and I've said they're not going to push us off a cliff because that'll start a war. They'll let us do this on our own, and we're doing a great job at it. China, Russia, the BRICS will have every incentive to massively inflate the price of gold because they hold it and that's what's backing their currency. At a 20% or 40% level, whatever the number comes out to be. But they're going to have an incentive to massively reflate, reprice gold.
Yeah. Um, I think what we're going to start seeing in this market is the younger generation starting to do a little bit more homework on this because they distrust the government a lot more than previous generations, but they're still believing in the cryptos and all that. What advice do you want to give for this next generation or new investors who are trying to navigate the complexities of all this? Like, what are you saying to the young guys out there or women?
Um, I would just say that it's important to understand that gold and silver are the only two monetary assets that cannot bankrupt. You can't become worthless tomorrow morning. If you have it in your hand and it doesn't get stolen from you, you have wealth. Whereas if you have money in the bank, your bank can go under. And when it goes under, read The Great Taking. That will explain what's going to happen when this thing goes down. Banks, brokers, insurance companies, your money is no longer legally your money. It's their money. It's on their balance sheets. You are the most junior of all creditors. So you're going to get paid last, and getting paid last means you're not going to get paid. So that's traditional stuff. With Bitcoin, the cryptos, I mean, those are digital air. There's nothing behind them. It's a wonderful speculation. I mean, we've seen it, goes up to 70,000, down to 20, up to 70, down to 15, up to 90 is where we are now. Well, my question is, what is it? What exactly is a Bitcoin? And will a farmer take a Bitcoin? And what happens if there's no power? What happens if the internet goes down? What happens if the government, this thing has morphed. Originally, it was totally secret. Nobody could see it. Nobody could tell what you have, totally secure. And now we see the FBI breaking into wallets, confiscating. Then it was going to be a currency. Everybody was going to trade in Bitcoin. This thing has morphed from purpose to purpose to purpose to purpose to purpose.
Yeah, very true.
And I'm just going to say there is one purpose and one purpose only for these cryptos, and that's speculation.
Fleecing the lamb.
Right.
Right. Like
Yeah, exactly.
like there's wholesale, retail and fairy tale. And right now there's a hell of a fairy tale story going on right now about crypto, in my opinion.
Well, there's credible evidence that Bitcoin was created by the NSA. And if that's the case, you don't have to think, well, some people might have to think a long time and never get it. But I don't think you need to think more than 5 or 10 seconds to understand that if it was created by the NSA, you're screwed.
Really good point. How are you positioning yourself in this market? Are you a physical gold buyer only? Do you invest in stocks too, ETFs, juniors, majors? Can you give a little light of landscape there?
I invest in physical gold and silver, no paper contracts whatsoever. I do have some mining shares. I've got a couple of concentrated positions in mining companies, but I hold almost all of my certificates. I would say probably 3, 4, maybe 5% of my certificates or my shares are with a broker. Everything else, I hold the certificate because when this goes down, I'm not going to be bailed in personally. I have the physical certificate, the physical receipt, if you will, of ownership. So, this system can go down and the banks can take all the stocks and they're going to end up with 95 plus percent of the stock holdings because they're going to be used to bail in these derivatives. And
of course,
when all is said and done, the derivatives are going to blow up. And the derivatives are probably 3 times, no, probably 5 to 7 times the size of all the assets on the planet.
Last question here. So if I'm buying physical gold and silver, do I want to store it in a bank? Like if a bank goes under, can they just shut the doors and say,
no way? No. You don't want to store it with a bank per se in their vault. I mean, a perfect example, I think it was Payne Weber back in, I want to say it was 2007, were charging customers for storage of silver. And they had done that for 6, 7, 8 years. And it turns out they never bought the silver. Now, they made their customers good. They went out and they bought the silver, gave it to their customers, no harm, no foul. But they did pay a fine. And obviously that's illegal and, completely immoral to do that. You don't want to store in a safe deposit box because when your bank goes down, the front door closes. You can't get in. By the time you can get in, your box is going to be empty. And there have been cases of that before that banks go under. I mean, even in 1933, 34, banks went under. People went to their safe deposit box and they were empty. If you're going to store, and I would say, unless you have a huge stash of gold, you should hold all your gold personally. I mean, you can hold easily 1,000 ounces. That's a couple monster boxes.
Hmm.
Be ingenious hiding it. Dig a hole in your backyard. Um, you know, hide it in your attic, hide it in your basement. Just hide it somewhere. Silver's a problem because it's so
Yeah.
cheap. There's so much of it. If you're going to store silver, you want to do that with a non-bank private vault.
Okay. Good advice. Bill, that's gonna be a wrap. And that was awesome. And I can't wait to have you back on the show in like 6 months from now just to see where we end up, right? So
Sure.
I'll put all your information at the bottom of our channel there for all our listeners to go to. A great conversation. And looking forward to chatting with you again.
Very good. Thanks, Arlen.
You can stay up to date with Bill and his work through his website, billholter.com. We'll put all the information at the bottom of our page. If you haven't already, be sure to join the Kinvestor Network by subscribing. Like our page, that helps us out a lot. We bring this content to you for free. And please follow us on social media. Again, also, we just hosted a large conference with a bunch of mining companies and CEOs of some companies I think that are very well run and that we work with as well. So go over there too as well and check it out. I'm off to Germany next week. If you're at the Frankfurt show with Kai Hoffman, please reach out to me, say hi, let's connect, let's network. Kai does a great job on his shows and conferences, so really excited to be over there for that. Until next time, that's the Kinvestor Report, and good luck investing. Cheers.